Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to speak to you about Mexico. This is a country which has appeared in the news a great deal in recent years, and rarely for good reasons. It has almost become normal to come across news from Mexico that tells stories of violence, rape, kidnappings and killings. Often women are those that suffer the worst consequences of this. I would like to speak about this today, focusing on the areas in which violence is a daily horror for the local population. There has been an upward trend in the escalation of violence in the whole of Mexico in recent years. However, some regions have been particularly badly hit. As we all know, Mexico has a very long border with the United States, and large amounts of illegal drugs are smuggled across this border regularly. These drugs are destined for large American cities where drug users are keen to pay high prices for these goods. These drugs are mainly produced in Latin America, but the highest paying consumers are in the United States. And it is this flow of drugs across Mexico's northern border that is the root cause of the country's violence. However, for many years, the violence that resulted from the drugs trade was not as serious as it is today. Drug smuggling took place in the region with all the adverse consequences it has on society, but the levels of violence were nothing like the extremes that can be seen today. The change was brought about unwittingly by Mexico's former president, Felipe Calderón. He wanted to fight the drugs trade with an iron fist. Under Calderón, policing in Mexico became tougher, and many drugs gangs saw their powers diminished. This meant that gangs had to divide a smaller market between them. A vicious rivalry resulted, in which organized criminals began to seek to outdo one another with their violent acts. The murder rate shot up, with the Mexico-US border becoming one of the most violent places on the entire planet. This upshot in killings was also brought about by government shortcomings in other areas. The budget set aside for implementing laws against violence in Mexico was meager. Efforts made in fighting violence were often meaningless without the necessary funding. It seems that the continuing violence in Mexico has now led to political changes. Drugs and violence were one of the main topics discussed in Mexico's last round of presidential elections. In December 2012, Enrique Peña Nieto was sworn in as the country's new president. He had promised to change the government's focus in order to reduce crime and violence in the country. He hopes to improve people's lives in Mexico without having to hunt down drug barons and chase after gangs. It is said that since 2006, more than 60,000 people have died from drug-related violence in Mexico. Many of the people making up these numbers were drug barons or gang members. However, a large proportion were also mere bystanders who just happened to get caught up in an escalation of killings. It seems that this intense violence may be finally subsiding. It seems that throughout 2012 the murder rate has slowed. Let's hope that for the good of the Mexican people, this trend continues. Thank you.